The New York Rangers are not making any changes to their top power play unit.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1284 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So just in case there was any doubt as far as whether or not you heard correctly just a minute ago, yes, that is indeed what's going on right now. The Rangers are indeed, at least if what they did at practice is to be believed, they are indeed not making any changes to their top power play unit. The news broke from Colin Stevenson, who does an awesome job covering the New York Rangers. He's been a former guest on Locked On New York Rangers as well. Got to have Colin back on here sooner or later. But this is a tweet, or I don't know if he had it first, but he was the first person that I saw on social media to report this. And this is what he posted on Sunday on Twitter. He says, no changes to power play one. Fox at the point, Panarin and Mika at the walls, Trocheck at net front, JT Miller in the bumper. And then he mentioned that there were two versions of the second power play. One of them had Zach Jones, and part of the reason for this, or really the entire reason for this, is that K'Andre Miller did not practice today. Apparently, he was feeling a little bit under the weather, so he was not available. So you have Zach Jones quarterbacking the second power play unit, and then you've also got Lafreniere, Perreault, Brodzinski, and Kreider. And then the second version of power play 2 had Brennan Othmann replacing one of the players that I just mentioned. Take a wild guess which player Gabe Perreault was replacing. I'll go through the list again. Zach Jones, Alexis Lafreniere, Gabe Perreault, Johnny Brodzinski, and Chris Kreider. Again, which one do you think Brennan Othmann replaced? Well, of course, it was Gabe Perreault. And, you know, the second power play unit, in a way, it doesn't really matter that much because that they play so infrequently. And I know there was talk from the Rangers and Peter Laviolette about potentially, giving the second power play unit a few more looks, giving them a little bit more ice time. But I'll believe it when I see it because we certainly did not see it in the most recent game against the Devils. Now, granted, the Rangers only had 2 power play opportunities in that game, but even with that being the case, nothing was any different in terms of the second power play unit's time on the ice. They might have jumped on with slightly more time left in the man advantage than they typically do, but for the most part, everything was exactly the same. And as far as like the top power play unit goes and just going with the same 5 players again, there's stubbornness. And then there's this. Every NHL coach, it seems, appears to have a certain amount of stubbornness. They appear to, at least certain situations in the game, certain roles for the team, they appear to certainly favor veteran players over young players. And I can accept at least a certain amount of that. Definitely like in a season like last year when everything was awesome and the Rangers, it wasn't perfect. I mean, you could point to certain things that this team wasn't as good at as they needed to be. And maybe there was a little bit of an over-reliance on things like the power play and on things like Igor Shesterkin. But be that as it may, we're talking about a team last year that had the best record in the NHL. And this year, so again, last year, you can accept that they're going to stick with what's working. They're going to stick with the veterans that have been leading the way and paving the path to this team having the best record in the NHL. But this year, with the lack of effort, the lack of energy in so many games, and just the fact that this power play is 2 for 43 now, I think is what it stands at. It's just incredible that at no point are changes even being considered. Or if they are being considered, they're not being considered very hard, because it's the same thing every single game. And I propose this question to all of you, and this is not rhetorical. I'm looking for actual answers to this question. How bad does the top power play need to get? How poorly do they need to play? How inept do they need to look before we try literally anything different? And I'm not talking about like putting Kreider on the top power play unit instead of Trocheck or JT Miller. I'm talking about like some actual changes. 2 of the young guys getting a crack on the top power play unit. If I had to put together the top power play right now, and they haven't asked me for my opinion on this, but I'll give it anyway. You go with Panarin, he can stay. Adam Fox can stay. You need a defenseman, and Adam Fox is going to have to be out there. I'm going to stick with JT Miller, even though, like I said, I think he's coming off of what I would say is his worst game in his second tour of duty with the New York Rangers. Just was not good at all. Was at least somewhat responsible for both of the first 2 goals that the Devils played, or that the Devils scored, and it just wasn't really playing a JT Miller brand of hockey out there. Just wasn't competing as hard as you're used to seeing him compete. And a couple times, couldn't handle some simple passes. So just kind of a weird afternoon for JT Miller. But despite that, we'll stick with JT. Give me JT, Panarin, and Fox. Those 3 can all stay. And after that, you know what? Give me Brian Hoffman, give me Gabe Pro, and just figure it out. Just throw them out there and give them a shot. Because, again, I ask you this question: how can things get any worse? And I'm actually looking for answers to this other question that I have. How bad does this have to get? What needs to happen? And feel free to weigh in the comment section. What needs to happen for Peter Laviolette to make any changes to this top power play unit? Because apparently 2 for 43 is not yet rock bottom. So we'll see how much worse it can possibly get. The crazy thing about this, you're going on social media and just seeing, okay, what's the latest in Ranger land? Are they practicing today? What's going on there? And then you see this news. And as a fan, you want to be surprised by it. You want to be appalled by it. You want to be shocked when you see that they're still going with the same unit. But you're not, because this has been par for the course down the stretch. They just will not make any changes to that top power play unit. They're just not going to do it. And I've also gotten to the point where, and this sounds kind of counterproductive when you're a Ranger fan and you're rooting for your team, but I've almost gotten to the point where I don't want them to score going forward. Because, again, I need that question answered. I need to see how bad it can possibly get before any changes are made. Let's say the Rangers over their next 3 games here, and there's only 6 left, thank God. There's only 6 games left in this season. The Rangers over the next 3 games, let's say they go a combined 0 for 12 on the power play, and everything is the same 5 players on the top power play unit. They're out there for a minute 35 of every power play. They never do anything. Let's also say they give up 2 more shorthanded goals in that time. Is that enough to make a change? Like, I need to see what the breaking point is going to be. And if they score a goal, it's going to ruin that, because that's going to buy them a whole bunch more time. And we'll never know how bad it needed to get for this team to actually make some changes when it comes to the top power play unit. But, for anybody that's, hanging on by a thread right now, as far as like what they've seen with the Rangers this season, one more thing that I'll throw out there as far as this goes, as far as changes to the power play unit are concerned, and as far as just changes to the players that are active on game night is concerned, I think a tipping point for all of us, this might be what completely breaks all of us, those of us that are just barely hanging on right now, is that the Rangers get mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, which will happen. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it will happen. And when that does happen, at that point, do they still keep going with the same 5 guys on the power play? Do they still keep putting the same players on the ice every single night in more or less the exact same roles? Or do they actually change some things up? Do they actually put Hoffman and Perreault on the ice together, maybe on the same line? That's the line of the future for the New York Rangers. And I'm not sure who would be centering that line. I mean, they've got a lot of centers. You could put Trocheck between them. You could put JT Miller between them. I guess you could put Mika between them, but I think I'd rather go with one of the other 2 that I just mentioned there. So you could do that. You could get those 2 used to playing with each other. You could put them on the top power play unit together and let them start building, some chemistry there. By all accounts, those 2 sound like they've kind of hit it off. They become pretty good friends in a short amount of time. That's great to hear, but let's see them put it in action. And to build on that, to expand this conversation from just the power play unit, once they're mathematically eliminated, you cannot give me one good reason why Matthew Robertson cannot and should not make his NHL debut. Even if that's only with 2 or 3 games left, just throw him out there and see what happens. I understand they haven't been blown away by his play with the Wolfpack, but this is a guy that you took in the 2nd round. And over the last bunch of years here, you're seeing them call up everybody from Connor Mackey to Brandon Scanlon to Ben Harper to Chad Ruedel to all these just random defensemen. At some point, how are you as an organization not just curious to see what he can do at the NHL level? And I think another player that I'd certainly like to see make his NHL debut, if and when the Rangers get mathematically eliminated, is Dylan Garand. I mean, goaltending is tough business, and the Rangers have made some deep playoff runs. Igor has been worked quite a bit down the stretch here because they need him. Every game is massive. But if you're out of it, if you can't possibly get into the playoffs, then call up Dylan Garand and give him a game. It's fine. Just see what he can do. If nothing else, get him prepared for what, life in the NHL is going to be like, or as good as you possibly can. So, yeah, that's where things stand. The Rangers don't change the power play. They don't really change anything. And again, I am willing at this point to meet the Rangers more than halfway. But if we get to the point where they are eliminated, they can't make the playoffs, and there's still no changes, that might be the breaking point for just about all of us. I just don't even know what you could say at that point. I don't even know what I would say at that point coming on this podcast and talking to you guys. But we're going to keep everything rolling just a second. I want to shift our attention to Alex Ovechkin, a little bit earlier today here on Sunday, becoming the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer with a goal against the New York Islanders. We'll get to that in just a second. And we're also going to do the prospect spotlight on Jackson Dorrington, who was acquired as part of the JT Miller trade, obviously several weeks ago, or a little bit more than a month ago at this point. I don't know. This wonderful season is all just kind of blended together by now. But we will talk about Dorrington. But in just a second, talking about Ovechkin eclipsing Gretzky. We will get to that. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You've got all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. There's easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, we're going to go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers, as always, for tuning in, sticking with this podcast, sticking with this team throughout this season. Rangers going to be back in action Monday night at home against Tampa Bay at 7 p.m. So whatever happens in that game, we'll go ahead and break it down in the next episode. But for right now, let's go ahead and shift our attention to Alex Ovechkin becoming the NHL all-time scoring leader with goal number 895 a little bit earlier today against the New York Islanders. It's funny. We keep things pretty Rangers-centric on here. Very rarely do we ever kind of stray from the Rangers because, this is Locked On Rangers, and I think that that's what most people are here for. But when something like this happens, I think you got to talk about it for, at least a couple of minutes here. And honestly, there actually is a Ranger tie-in because he passes Wayne Gretzky. Gretzky is with the Rangers for 3 years, scored the last bunch of goals of his NHL career as a member of the Blue Shirts. But be that as it may, his record has finally fallen here, a record that I don't think too many people ever thought would even be challenged, much less be eclipsed, and much less be eclipsed by somebody who's 39 years old and broke his leg earlier this season. It really is crazy stuff. I got to see this happen live, and I really got lucky because I was not able to catch the start of the game, but I put it on for the start of the second period, and as soon as the Capitals went onto the power play, I kind of was thinking like, yeah, I think this might be the moment. And sure enough, there's a situation where you've got Dylan Strome to Tom Wilson, over to Alex Ovechkin in the left faceoff circle. That's where Ovechkin has obviously done a ton of damage over the years. And we've seen him blast that one-timer, but this was actually a wrist shot. Nevertheless, an absolute snipe of a wrist shot. He buries it, and just like that, he's the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer. There was a really nice ceremony. They delayed the game for a while to do that, and I think rightfully so. You go on social media, and you see some people throwing a fit about it, and, how is this okay? You're stopping the game for such and such amount of time. Dude, the guy just set the NHL all-time record for most goals ever. The game is going to stop for a little while. It'll be okay. It'll continue. Just enjoy it. Just breathe it in for a minute. Even if you're not the biggest Ovechkin fan, and a lot of Ranger fans are not the biggest Alex Ovechkin fans, and that's fine. You got to certainly appreciate the magnitude of what he did a little bit earlier here today. And the accomplishment speaks for itself. I mean, I could obviously go on and on about that, but I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. Obviously, anybody that has scored more goals in the NHL than anybody else to ever play the sport, the feat speaks for itself. But speaking as a Ranger fan, I thought this would be more fun to kind of give my perspective there, and you guys can do the same thing in the comment section if you'd like to weigh in. But you think about Alex Ovechkin, for me, my mind immediately goes to the Rangers-Capitals rivalry because basically ever since he got here, it's been game on between the Rangers and the Capitals. We've seen these two teams meet in the playoffs so many times in the Alex Ovechkin era. And if the Rangers weren't playing so bad right now, we actually might be, getting ready for one more round, so to speak. We got one more round last season. We could get another round this year, but it's not going to happen now, not with the way the Rangers have been playing recently. So we don't have that to look forward to. But, I mean, one of the ultimate Ranger enemies, Ranger rivals, whatever you want to call it, and some of these playoff series that the Rangers and Capitals have played against each other since Ovechkin has been there have just been absolutely insane. Going 6 games, going 7 games, going into overtime in Game 7. You guys remember that from about 10 years ago at this point. But Derek Stepan in overtime in Game 7, bearing a rebound to eliminate Ovechkin and the Capitals from the second round. Rangers went on to the conference final that season. But, yeah, I mean, just so many different meetings in the playoffs. And I think what's kind of fun about the Rangers and Capitals rivalry is that, anytime, and this is true no matter what, but certainly for the playoffs, anytime it's Rangers Capitals, your marching orders are basically to try to at least contain Alex Ovechkin. Completely shutting him down, especially for an entire playoff series, is borderline impossible. Now, granted, the Rangers were actually able to accomplish that last season. That was a sweep, and the Rangers were pretty much in control of just about every game in that series. But you've got your hands full dealing with this guy, obviously. And, I talked about this when we did a crossover with Locked On Penguins. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Hunter's been the host forever, and, Pat's there now too, and he does a great job too. But I would always joke with Hunter when it came to Sidney Crosby about, how many more years of this do we have left? How many more battles do the Rangers have to go in with the Penguins, with Crosby still at an elite level? And it's kind of the same thing with Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals. And as much as, I'm certainly going to be glad when they're gone and they're out of the way, I'm really going to miss it too. And like a lot of Ranger fans, I've got no love lost for Sidney Crosby. He's not very high up on my list of all-time favorite NHL players. And the same is true for Ovechkin. Not to the same degree as Crosby, but you got to appreciate all the battles, all the playoff matchups, all the dramatic moments, all the highs, the lows, the wins and the losses against those players and against those teams. And I think you got to take it in. And you got to admit, there's a little part of you that's going to miss it when it's over. And there will probably be some other nemesis that pops up for the Rangers and some other player that we don't like and we can boo and jeer for the next decade plus. I think Jack Hughes is certainly an emerging candidate when it comes to that. But yeah, man, I mean, it's going to be, it's definitely going to be a lot different whenever those guys ultimately do decide to hang it up. And Ovechkin, again, the accomplishment speaks for itself. But I touched on this just a second ago. I just want to emphasize this real quick. The fact that this dude broke his leg this season and missed 6 weeks of hockey, if you had told me going into this season, or if you had asked me, do you think Ovechkin is going to catch Gretzky this year? I probably would have said no. I didn't think he had 41 goals or whatever it is to get enough pucks in the net to pass Gretzky this season. I would think that he probably would catch him next year. But if you also would have told me that he would break his leg at the age of 39 and miss 6 weeks of the season, I'd say there's no chance. How is Ovechkin going to possibly even come close to Gretzky this season if that's the case? But really, I should probably just take my own advice because I always tell people on here, never bet against a legend. And I guess in a roundabout way, I did that. I just didn't think there was any way possible that it would happen this year, and especially when the injury is thrown in there as well. So again, the accomplishment speaks for itself, and it's not going to happen this year. But do we have one more round of Rangers versus Ovechkin in the playoffs next season? Could happen. I mean, I think for sure either of these teams could very easily make the playoffs next year. I don't know. We're going to have to see what both teams do in the offseason, especially the Rangers. But all you got to do is finish in the top half of your conference. And the way that they have things sectioned off now with the divisions, it makes a Rangers Capitals first round meeting, that much more likely to happen because, most of the first round matchups are division matchups. Unless, you've got wild cards, 2 wild cards from the same division, that can throw things off a little bit. But maybe, just maybe, there's one more playoff matchup between these two teams, between the Rangers and Ovechkin, somewhere in the very near future. It would pretty much have to be next season. But we're going to keep everything rolling just a second. Going to shift our attention to Jackson Dorrington. We've been highlighting some Ranger prospects, some guys that are new to the Wolfpack, and Dorrington is certainly one of them, and we will talk about him in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It is the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether you're snacking at your desk on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they're always a great go-to. The satisfying crack of opening each shell, it is like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, just wanted to go ahead and close today's episode by talking a little bit about Jackson Dorrington. We've been doing this recently. We, not too long ago, talked about Noah Laba. He recently signed his ELC, turned pro with the Rangers, made his debut for the Hartford Wolfpack. And we're actually going to get to Callum Tung not too far into the future, I don't think. He is a goalie from UConn that just made his Wolfpack debut on Sunday night. That game actually concluded not more than an hour ago. And he stopped 14 of 16 shots, had a chance at the shutout. The Pack was up 1-0 going into the third period. And unfortunately, Hershey then scored twice, somewhat early in the third period for both of those goals and went on to win the game 2-1. But still, a nice debut for Tung. The Wolfpack was posting some highlights from his night on social media. He made some really nice saves. There was one sequence where just rapid fire saves, one after the other. He looked good, especially for somebody making his pro debut. And we'll get more into Tung in a future episode here. But for right now, let's go ahead and discuss Jackson Dorrington. And for anybody that needs a little bit of a refresher, Dorrington is a 20-year-old defenseman who was part of the JT Miller trade. The entire trade, once again, the Rangers got JT Miller, Jackson Dorrington, and Eric Brandstrom. And the Canucks got Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a conditional first-round pick, which they have since traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yay. Dorrington, 6'2", 192 pounds. He's also a lefty. He was taken in the 6th round of the 2022 NHL draft at number 176 overall. And not too long ago, he made his debut with the Hartford Wolfpack as well. He signed a 3-year ELC with the Rangers, and he is on an amateur tryout right now with the Wolfpack for the rest of the season. 3 games with the Pack as of this recording. His 4th game just wrapped up, but I didn't see the stats for this one. No points so far. He's also an even plus minus. And again, this is his first taste of pro hockey. To get an idea of where he came from and what he's all about, he played 3 seasons of college hockey at Northeastern. And in those 3 seasons combined, 105 games, 8 goals, 25 assists. And he is also a plus 17 in that time. One award that he got, these college pages keep track of all their accolades. And he was a 2-time member of the all-academic team. But the one that really stood out to me was the unsung hero of Northeastern for 2023-2024. That's a team award, which I can only assume means that it's voted on by the players on the team. But I figure we can wrap up this section on Dorrington by talking a little bit about some of the scouting reports that have been, available online ever since he was entering the draft and up to current day. This one comes to us from Elite Prospects, their 2022 NHL draft guide. The constants in Dorrington's game are the intelligence across all 3 zones. Defensively, he eliminates off-puck threats and times his engagements at the moment of least resistance, complementing his robust style. In transition, he steps inside, cuts around forecheckers, and passes to the middle. He's an advantage creator up the rink, and he's an instinctual activator, defined by his constant weak side activation from the point and bolstered by his give and go style. And this comes to us from an article from Chris Faber on NHL.com. Dorrington is a 6'2", 192-pound defenseman who leans into his in-zone strengths to make up the type of defenseman that he is. He likes to be a player who controls the crease and has the physicality to back it up. I think a lot of Ranger fans are really going to like that last sentence there, because one of the problems that they've had, even last year a little bit, but certainly this year, is how easy it can be for Ranger opponents to drive right to the front of the net and or set up shop right in the crease there. And you can't get away with as much as you used to be able to get away with when it comes to defending your crease because, going back about like 15 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that at this point, but anybody that was anywhere near the front of a net, it was open season. And if you didn't absolutely just tattoo the guy, if there wasn't blood, the referee was not going to call a penalty. Now you can only do so much, but you can still do enough. You can still knock them around there. You can keep them off balance a little bit. You can tie them up a little bit. You can get away with certain things in the crease that maybe you can't get away with at other parts of the rink. But the Rangers just don't do it. They just don't make life difficult enough on anybody that's trying to drive to the front of the net or anybody that's trying to set up shop there. And you hear that Dorrington here, at least per this one, scouting report, says that he likes to basically, lay down the law when it comes to the crease. And he has the physicality to back it up and doesn't allow guys to set up shop there. So that's a nice thing for sure. And we'll do one more here. This one comes to us from William Douglas. Or rather, this one is from Steve Jacobs. Jackson loves to be physical, has great instincts. He can skate the puck out, makes great passes, and he can be a big shutdown guy. Both him and Max, every practice, every game, they make an impact. So I think we can call it there. I mean, the only other thing that I figure we can talk about real quick here is the Rangers' uncertainty on the blue line. Now, it's a little bit more settled than it was as recently as even a month or two ago, because the Rangers have extended a lot of their in-house defensemen for better or worse. But you look at the guys that are under contract going forward here. Obviously, Adam Fox has signed long-term. K'Andre Miller, that could go either way in the offseason. I'm starting to think they're going to trade him because he's like the one guy that hasn't gotten a contract extension. And if it was up to me, yes, they would trade him because I think you could get a lot for him. And on top of that, you're not stuck with the tab, basically, for paying K'Andre Miller, however much he's going to end up getting paid on his next contract. You got Carson Soucy's under contract next season. Borgen's under contract for a while. You got the 4-year extension. Schneider's under contract next year. Vakanainen got the 2-year extension for only $1.5 million, so it's fine. That's not really that big of a deal. So I don't know. It'd be tough to crack this lineup next season, but then again, the Ranger defensemen have really struggled. Dorrington, I think, would have to really, really show well for himself at the Wolfpack before he even becomes anything close to an option for this Ranger team. I get the feeling that even outside of the Ranger defensemen that are currently on the NHL roster and the guys that are currently under contract, I get the feeling that the Rangers might prefer calling up a veteran defenseman from the Wolfpack rather than going to this 20-year-old former 6th-round pick. So, I mean, it's really in his hands. You can obviously hurt or help your stock in the organization based on how you play. It's kind of been easy to forget that this season because of what I talked about earlier in this episode. We see this power play just being completely inept game in and game out, and yet there are no changes, there are no adjustments. But I do think that we're probably looking at a new coach next season, and I hope that it gets back to what we thought we were seeing for a while with this Ranger team, where you go into training camp and the preseason, and guys are out there competing for spots, and you actually can, based on how you play, earn a spot on the Rangers or not earn a spot on the Rangers. And Dorrington should be no different. But again, I would be shocked if he started next season with the Rangers. I think the Wolfpack is probably the most likely place for him. And we'll keep tabs on him like we do all the other Ranger prospects as well. But we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks to those of you who already have, pushing us over 4,000 subscribers. It is very, very much appreciated. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.